Another question is, do you think a new seller's disclosure will be developed?
You mean the transfer disclosure statement or an agency disclosure? Probably an agency disclosure. Maybe that might be a place to put it, in that agency disclosure on the seller side, right? I don't think it'll affect the transfer disclosure statement. It could. I mean, that could be a place to put it. At CAR, we've got a great the form committee at CAR, just so much great talent there. Those people that get together, that talk about this, that are practicing brokers, that come up with these great forms that we have to use, which, by the way, is a great argument for being a realtor. So everybody's going to abandon the real estate industry. Well, if you have to be a realtor to use the forms, then maybe you won't abandon the realtor organization because you want access to the forms.
Another question here is, so if I have a seller and she's willing to give me X% and decides to only offer the buyer's agent less, is that okay?
Yes, that's okay. Matter of fact, that's the preference according to the way this last case came out and the Department of Justice. That's what they would take out less, something different.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because it would depend on the market, wouldn't it? Theoretically, if it's a seller's market, maybe it would be less, but if it's not, maybe it would be more. I mean, I remember selling real estate where in the 80s where I offered more to the agent that brought in the buyer.
I've seen it all. I've got to say, on the escrow side, where the listing agent will take a reduced commission for whatever reason, their friends are helping them out, family or whatever, I don't know, and offer more on the other side, or other times where it's just a flat fee of hardly their gas to get there, to all kinds of percentages. I mean, we look at the RPAs and see all kinds of different compensation models in there.
Yep, for sure. So could they offer more or less? Yep.
Let's see here. All right, just sort of a follow-up. There was a comment about not using specific percentages since we're in an antitrust discussion, which is a good point. And here's another comment.
That's why I always use 4 or 5 or whatever that might be. But I think that's this is an interesting point. As real estate licensees, we're always ultra concerned about antitrust, aren't we? Well, we should be. That's what this is. This is antitrust. And this is antitrust on a huge scale. And so as concerned as we are about not talking about commissions, although if you go on social media, people talk about it all the time. It's amazing. We should be as concerned here, and we should want to know and understand these cases, and we should want to be able to articulate these cases to consumers.
And there's one other comment here. The sticking point seems to be the following. How does one explain to a seller that if they don't offer buyer agent compensation, but that if they don't, they'll get less traffic and fewer offers? Seems like that takes us back to the very crux of antitrust, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is that's the thing you can't say, right? So if you're working with a buyer, you can't use as your criteria for showing the amount of the commission, which is kind of a nuts kind of thing anyway, because FSBOs offer no commissions, right? Are you required to show all FSBOs? I mean, if you took it to the extreme, and so what the hard, you're right, the hard point to get across is it might be almost human nature, although they're not supposed to steer based on the amount of commission that might have, but you certainly can't use that as an argument for offering commission on the buy side, right? That's part of what they're claiming. So if you can't, you've got to come up with what are the other reasons to offer that commission. And I don't think people it'd be great to sit down and have a bottle of wine or whatever you're going to do to, and come up with all of the great value propositions. Now, there are a lot of them. If you think about it, somebody who works on the buy side, it's not easy to buy a house. There's all kinds of forms that need to be signed. It's complex. And so somebody to qualify, to find the right buyer, to pre-qualify the buyer, to do all the things that need to be done on the buy side, don't sell that short. And you need somebody who represents the buyer to do that. You want to make sure that whoever's on the other side has got a representative, because guess what? If they don't, that means that your agent's probably going to act as a dual agent. And as a dual agent, that's a limited sort of agency. And then also remember that you're responsible for the acts of your agent when performed within the scope of authority. So now you're going to be responsible for what your agent talks to and says to the buyer's agent. Right? So there's great value in an agent representing the buyer. I'd sit down and make a list up of all the things that you do when you represent a buyer in a real estate transaction. Here's why you want to encourage somebody to represent the buyer, because here's all the things they're going to do for the buyer. But it can't be, you can't say, well, you got to do it because you won't get as many showings if you offer less. That you don't want to do.
I wonder if the attorneys representing NAR and the brokerages actually did that exercise you just talked about.
I don't know, but I will say this about NAR, and I've had a lot of experience with NAR, and I'm a realtor emeritus, which means I've been a realtor for over 40 years. And I believe in many of the good things, and I don't agree with NAR all the time, but I think it's a great organization. And I was involved with NAR in the 2008 litigation with the Department of Justice. You probably don't remember that. It had to do with virtual office websites and the display of data. And I met with the NAR attorneys, and I know NAR hires the best legal counsel that's available, because NAR's got this duty to everybody to do that. So I don't doubt that they put forward what they believe to be their best foot. And I know they're hiring, now appeals are different, right? So the people who are really good at appeals are different law firms, different attorneys, and are good at the basic level, right? So the people that they've gotten, I don't know who they are, but I'm confident that they did their homework, that they hired the best people that they could hire, that they get the best experts that they can get. And it's just unfortunate the way it turned out. We can all be, Monday morning quarterbacks on this, but it was in NAR's best interest and all of the members' best interest to do the best job they could. And I believe that's what they attempted to do. And I also read that the judge used to be a class action attorney, which is kind of interesting. So there's no telling why and how these things end up the way they do. But remember this is not a 3-year-old argument. This goes back decades. And read the FTC report in 1983 around the real estate industry. And it goes back even further than that. And look at the Consumer Federation of America. Go look at the Consumer Federation of America. Has been after NAR and organized real estate as long as I can remember. And when they write about this case and you read what they write about it, it's amazing, because they have a completely different perspective. And that's part of what we're up against. And but again, I think it's important for you to know about it, to be able to talk about it, to not worry about it, to do the things that you can do to continue to build and enhance your business. People are always going to want to buy and sell real estate, and it's going to change. I'm looking at brand new compensation models that are amazing to me, that I think are incredible, make a lot of sense. Technology allows for things to happen today that couldn't happen 10 years ago.